Chea reaches out to the manager of the blog post and tells him that she knows someone with yellow eyes who has been keeping an eye on her. She asks if there is a way to escape from the vampire, but he insists that he needs proof first. Frustrated, she leaves, wondering what might happen if she brought the man to Yunsu. She starts to feel like she's acting like a real criminal in this situation. Chea decides that if a customer doesn't show up within 30 minutes, she'll just leave. However, to her shock, a woman arrives requesting to go to the exact address Yunsu had given her. Unbeknownst to her, the manager is trailing her taxi, determined to catch a glimpse of the vampire. Chea doubts herself, questioning whether she can really go through with it. She thinks, others are better than my own family, and is immediately shocked by her own thoughts. Trying to block them out, she focuses on driving. When the sweet lady in the back seat offers Chea some bread her daughter made, Chea suddenly stops the car and angrily asks the woman to get out. The lady starts lecturing her, pointing out that Chea could be her daughter's age. Seeing that there is only one road now, she had to go to that place. Upon reaching the address, Chea feels like a monster for what she has done. But her thoughts are interrupted by the voice of the lady who is still sitting in the back seat. Shocked, Chea wonders why Yunsu didn't take the woman or if she had somehow made a mistake. The possibility frightens her, leaving her overwhelmed with anxiety. Meanwhile, the manager, trailing behind them, is intrigued by Chea's conflicted expressions. She feels relieved that the woman didn't disappear and wonders if there's a deeper reason behind it, as Yunsu never makes mistakes. While pondering this, she also notices the car that has been following her. Inside the church, Gurim hands her another slip, but this time she asks to see Yunsu. Gurim dismisses her request, telling her to just do as instructed and get rid of the car tailing her. This makes her realize that the car following her must be the reason Yunsu didn't take the woman. After the mass ends, a group of women approaches Yunsu, inviting him for coffee. Chea decides to join as well. Yunsu remarks that it'll be entertaining, though Gurim chooses to leave. Chea steps outside and confronts the manager, who is still following her. She tells him that she already knew he was trailing her and assures him that it's fine to keep doing so. Adding, she promises to show him something interesting, the vampire. At the cafe, the ladies ask if they are interrupting something between Chea and Yunsu. Chea casually replies that she needs to stay with them to feel safe. Smiling, Yunsu teasingly asks what else she thinks he might be trying to do. This sparks the ladies' curiosity, and they ask if something is going on between the two. Yunsu answers with a grin, explaining that Chea is working for him and adding that she's good at her job. Chea excuses herself from the table to bring coffee. As she walks away, she realizes something important. Yunsu doesn't act recklessly when others are watching, likely because he doesn't want to be discovered. This gives her an idea. If Yunsu wants to maintain his human facade and live quietly among humans, she'll expose him in front of everyone, ensuring he won't come near her again. Returning to the table, she intentionally drops one of the coffee cups and cuts her hand on the shards. Blood trickles from the wound, and Yunsu's yellow eyes flash in response. Suddenly, Chea finds herself surrounded by roses, their intoxicating fragrance clouding her mind and making her forget her plan. From outside, the manager observes the scene and notices something strange. Everyone in the cafe appears frozen, except for Yunsu. Yunsu leans in, his fangs bared as if he's about to bite Chea, but he abruptly stops when the sound of a camera shutter breaks the silence. Yunsu steps back, his face dark with fury, and glares at Chea. This was some kind of funny joke. Yunsu storms out of the cafe in a fury. Chea approaches the manager to see if he managed to capture any pictures, but the camera revealed nothing. She advises him to stop searching for vampires and instead focus on running far away. Meanwhile, Yunsu rushes home and orders Gurim to burn his blood-stained shirt. He angrily declares that a line has been crossed and vows to play some serious pranks, muttering under his breath that a joke should only be treated as a joke. Heading downstairs to where the bodies are kept, he contemplates what Chea has done, and the more he dwells on it, the stronger his desire becomes to punish her. A truck driver encounters a coffin in the middle of the road. Later, the news reports that inside the coffin was the body of a 40-year-old man who had gone missing. Chaya fears that it might be the same man she had driven to Yunsu. At a nearby counter, two men discuss the incident, speculating that it could be the work of some taxi driver, which frightens her even more. When Chea arrives home, she searches for information about the incident and confirms her worst fear. It was indeed the same man. Realizing that this is Yunsu's revenge for what happened the previous day, she curses him. Despair washes over her as she acknowledges that, in the end, she will be the one caught, not Yunsu, since she is the one traceable. Then she remembers something, a button from his shirt that had been ripped off in the cafe. It is the only trace of Park Yunsu. Determined, Chea reminds herself that if there's one thing she's good at, it's surviving. She resolves to make him fall using the very leash he has bound her with. We see Chea digging up the grave of the girl Yunsu had forced her to bury, placing the button on the body as evidence. She prays that this small button might become a fatal blow to Yunsu. Leaving the suitcase with the body by the side of the road, the suitcase also makes it to the news, but to Chea's surprise, no one mentions the button. Meanwhile, Yunsu remains unfazed by the reports, remarking that he had thought she was smarter than this. He briefly considers releasing incriminating pictures of her, but decides against it, relishing her suffering instead. Gurim, growing increasingly frustrated, yells at Yunsu, accusing him of advertising their existence and demanding that he stop this madness. Yunsu, calm and collected, reassures Gurim that he has not made any mistakes. Suddenly, Yunsu's phone rings. He answers it, but his composed demeanor falters at the voice on the other end. The caller asks, "What are you doing?" Yunsu addresses the man as "father," his expression visibly strained as he speaks. The man accuses Yunsu of engaging in foolishness again, comparing it to the events from 30 years ago. He informs Yunsu that the button from his shirt was found with the body, questioning if Yunsu is attempting to expose their kind to the world. On the other side of the phone is a blonde man. He explains that for 1,000 years, their kind has remained hidden due to strict discipline, and he accuses Yunsu of acting recklessly and irrationally. The man pointedly asks if Yunsu is causing trouble on purpose. Yunsu, with a nonchalant tone, responds, "Who knows?" but assures him that he will handle these two cases. The man firmly reminds Yunsu that hunting is prohibited and advises him to embrace a normal life, adding that the incident from 30 years ago was more than enough. Then, with a mocking tone, the man taunts Yunsu, asking if he has forgotten his friend who passed away. Yunsu snaps and angrily tells him to stop, but the man continues, slyly asking, "Did he hear?" implying Garim might have overheard. For the first time, Yunsu appears genuinely frightened. The man presses further, stating that he knows exactly what Yunsu is hiding. This time, Yunsu pleads with him to stop, and they hang up. As Yunsu reflects on the conversation, he realizes that Han Chea must be behind this chaos, thinking to himself that she is far smarter than he initially believed. Turning to Gurim, Yunsu informs him that hunting is forbidden and instructs him to deal with Chea, all while the tension between them grows as they subtly keep an eye on one another. The narrative then shifts to a flashback from 30 years ago. A man named Sion is seen knocking on Yunsu's door, holding his young son, Gurim, in his arms. Yunsu asks Son what he means by a kid, and whether it refers to the woman they met 10 years ago. Son looks at him with a sorrowful expression but says nothing. Yunsu then notices that Son is wearing his clothes and demands an explanation, but Son remains silent. In the present, Chea goes into hiding, but the manager finds her. She decides to tell him everything. The manager then reveals that he also has a button with the same unique pattern. Chea, surprised, remarks that she couldn't find the brand anywhere and asks how he came to possess one. The manager explains that 30 years ago, when he was a child, he witnessed a horrifying scene. One night, he saw a man draining the blood from his friend's mother as she screamed for help. During the commotion, the man dropped the button. The next day, his friend's entire family disappeared without a trace. Realizing that the buttons are identical, the manager concludes that the man he saw must be Park Yunsu. Nearby, Gurim overhears the conversation and his face fills with shock as he mutters, "Yunsu, and my mother?" Chea suggests to the manager that they should hide somewhere for the time being. While planning their next move, she receives a message from an unknown sender claiming to know something about Yoonsu and asking to meet. Assuming it can't be Park Yoon-soo himself, she decides to go and meet the sender. To her surprise, it turns out to be Gurim. When she asks how he knew it was her ID, he replies that she was foolish enough to use her real name on the note. Chea wonders why he called her, pointing out that he and Yoon-soo are on the same side. Gurim quickly denies being aligned with Yoon-soo, telling her not to lump them together and asserting that he wants to help her. Chea is skeptical of his motives. Gurim explains that the button is significant because it bears Yoon-soo's mark, the wolf symbol, and adds that Yoon-soo is unable to take action right now due to the incident. He pulls out a paper slip, but this time, the address listed is Yoon-soo's house. Gurim tells her that if anyone can put an end to Yoon-soo, it might be her. Chea hesitates and asks if Gurim is also a vampire and how one could even defeat such a creature. Instead of answering, Gurim walks away. When Gurim arrives home, he finds that Yoon-soo is not there. A note left behind states that Yoon-soo has gone on a trip and will return when he feels hungry. We see Yoon-soo on vacation, reflecting on how the world around him keeps changing while he remains the same. He finds this unchanging nature of his existence deeply annoying. Back in Korea, Chea arrives at Yoon-soo's house. The gate to the mansion opens on its own, and she thinks to herself that someone who lives in such a creepy house must naturally have a personality like his. Gurim opens the gate for her, asking why she's late. Chea questions why he can't simply end Yoon-soo himself. Gurim responds with a vague, "I just can't," which leaves her baffled. Annoyed, she asks if he at least knows how to do it. Gurim admits he doesn't, frustrating her even more. However, he mentions that he once saw Yoon-soo kill another vampire, but doesn't remember much about how it happened. He suggests they might find some clues in the house. They make their way to Yoon-soo's study. Chea speculates that since no one is allowed inside the study and Yoon-soo is too arrogant to hide anything in overly complicated spots, they should check simple places first. As expected, she finds a silver cup tucked away in one of his drawers. Gurim exclaims, "This is it!" But before they can react further, they are startled by Yoon-soo's voice. "I didn't know we had guests." Park Yoon-soo was back, and his piercing gaze fell on the two intruders as he calmly asked what they were doing. Chea begins to wonder if Yoon-soo and Gurim had planned this whole situation together. Yoon-soo remarks that they look like they just got caught stealing something, casually taking the silver cup from Chea's hand. The tension in the room is palpable. With a smile, Yoon-soo says it's been a while since they've had guests and offers to cook her a meal. Chea refuses, but he insists. When Gurim tries to intervene, Yoon-soo cuts him off with a stern look, declaring that Chea will stay for the meal. As they move to the kitchen, Yoon-soo asks Chea how she finds the house. She replies that it feels lifeless, to which he nonchalantly responds, "That's the point." Once in the kitchen, he turns to Gurim and asks if there's any meat left or if he should go catch some. Gurim, uneasy, wonders what kind of twisted joke Yoon-soo is trying to play this time, while Chea grows increasingly terrified at the thought of what meat he might mean. Eventually, Yoon-soo smilingly serves the food and encourages Chea to eat. When she hesitantly asks why he isn't eating, he calmly responds, "Don't worry, I eat everything you bring me." To add to her unease, he pours her a glass of red wine. Chea refuses, but he assures her it isn't alcohol. He taunts her, saying that if she drinks it all, he'll let her leave quietly. Terrified, Chea drinks the wine in one gulp, only to realize it was just juice. Furious, she curses him under her breath as she storms out. Yoon-soo merely laughs at her reaction. Once Chea is gone, Gurim confronts Yoon-soo, asking why he returned earlier than expected. Yoon-soo replies that he was bored. Then his tone shifts as he coldly asks Gurim what they were doing in his study. Gurim looks deeply hurt as he stares at Yoon-soo and hesitantly asks if he ended his father using that silver cup. Yoon-soo, taken aback, asks Gurim what he's talking about, but Gurim presses on, saying he remembers it now, seeing his father's body and Yoon-soo standing over it with a smile. Surprised, Yoon-soo hesitantly asks, "You saw that?" This revelation causes Gurim to break down in tears. He yells at Yoon-soo, begging him to make an excuse or say something to convince him that his memories are wrong. Yoon-soo stands silent, realizing he can't deny what happened. After a moment, he simply responds, yes. Gurim, devastated, runs out of the room. Yoon-soo is left standing there, sadness washing over him as he reflects on the truth that Gurim had known all along and kept it buried for 30 years. In his memories, Yoon-soo recalls that it was Seon himself who had begged Yoon-soo to end his life. Meanwhile, still crying, admits to himself that he always knew the truth but had desperately hoped he was wrong. He laments that Park Yoon-soo was all he had, but now he can no longer live with him. Outside, the manager waits near the house and sees Chea emerge first, followed shortly by Gurim. The manager feels a flicker of recognition when he sees Gurim's face, but before he can fully process it, Gurim suddenly vanishes into thin air. Shocked, the manager starts to suspect Han Chea, wondering how she's connected to these strange events. The manager hires a detective, and through their investigation, it's revealed that Chea was imprisoned for 5 years for attempted murder after threatening her ex-boyfriend with a knife. Meanwhile, Chea returns to her home, thinking that if Yoon-soo is not allowed to hunt, she is safe for the time being. However, upon opening the door, she finds Gurim already inside. He casually tells her that he'll be staying there for a while, as he's had a fight with Yoon-soo. He adds that while he's there, she can ask him anything she wants to know about Yoon-soo. Over the next week, Chea bombards Gurim with so many questions about Yoon-soo that she's left with only trivial ones, like his height, weight, and even where his moles are. Finally, she asks why Yoon-soo is so obsessed with her. Gurim suggests that it might be because she didn't run away. Everyone else before her either fled in fear or lost their sanity. Chea comments bitterly that there's no way to escape someone like Yoon-soo. Later, as they eat ramen together, she asks Gurim if he can survive on just ramen, considering he's also a vampire. Gurim replies that he's fine. From a distance, the manager, who has been keeping an eye on them, watches the interaction and becomes convinced that Chea has fooled him and is also a vampire. Determined to act, he decides to burn down Yoon-soo's mansion. As Chea and Gurim continue talking, she asks if Yoon-soo, unable to hunt for a month, wouldn't eventually starve to death. Gurim explains that vampires have emergency food stored for such situations. Meanwhile, the manager sneaks into Yoon-soo's mansion, preparing to carry out his plan. Unbeknownst to him, a shadowy figure silently watches his every move. As the manager is about to set the mansion on fire, someone knocks him out. He himself as a child, talking to Gurim, whom he calls Han Seok, saying that Han Seok appears in his dreams. It's revealed that the manager is confined in a dimly lit cell. Outside the cell, Gurim stands watching him and asks if he remembers what happened that night. The manager admits that it was too dark for him to confirm the man's identity. Desperate, the manager asks if Gurim is also a vampire and pleads with him to turn him into one. Gurim walks away, saying he doesn't want to hear his old name, let alone remember it. Left alone, the manager begins to hallucinate, imagining that the other people in the cell are trying to attack him. In a panic, he lashes out at them, but in reality, they are just sitting there unconscious. Meanwhile, Park Yoon-soo, resting upstairs, wakes abruptly, disturbed by the strong scent of blood wafting up from the cell below. Yoon-soo realizes he has been asleep for a week and is now at his limit. He mutters to himself that it would be ironic if a vampire died of hunger. A foul, rotten smell like decaying corpses catches his attention, and he heads downstairs, desperate for relief. To his horror, he finds that everyone in the cell has died. Meanwhile, outside, the mansion is engulfed in flames. The manager, having escaped, hails a ride from Chea. However, once inside the car, he starts attacking her, accusing her of deceiving him. In the struggle, he accidentally hits his head against the car interior, knocking himself out. Chea, left bewildered and shaken, wonders what to do with him. Back at the mansion, Yoon-soo stumbles out of the burning house. Weak from hunger, he can barely distinguish reality from a dream. He laments that he can't drink from corpses and must hunt, but his body gives out and he collapses just outside the main gate. Standing before him is Han Chea, who takes in the situation with a smirk. Assessing his frail condition, she remarks with mock cheerfulness, "Looks like you could use some help, Park Yoon-soo." He admits that he does. Chaya steps on his hand, saying that he really can't move. Yunsu comments that she looks really pleased right now. They are interrupted by a noise coming from her car, and Yunsu says, "Seems like you also have a problem. How about we help each other out? You and me, the best way." Chaya asks what she will get from helping him. He replies, "Your freedom. If you help me, I'll let you go." Chaya adds, "Besides my freedom, I also want you to guarantee my life." Thinking she is smart, he agrees. She brings the manager out of the taxi, but Yunsu tells her he needs a little more help. "I need flowing blood," he says. She complies with his request. Yunsu suddenly stands up and attacks the manager. After he's done, he steps toward Chaya. He tells her not to worry and promises to keep his word, on one condition. Chea must attend Mass every Sunday because he needs to monitor what she might say to others. She asks again, confirming, "If I comply with this, will you really leave me alone?" The moment Yunsu says yes, she gives him a tight slap and says, "Now I'm done." She curses him, saying she doesn't even want to talk about him or think about him anymore. "Let's live our own lives," she declares, walking away as Yunsu stands there silently. In the car, tears stream down her cheeks as she whispers to herself, "I survived."